Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums with a pick a pile reading. I know it's been a while, but happy 2025. I really hope that this reading finds you well. So this is your opportunity to choose whatever deck you feel drawn to, and then check out the timestamps in the description box for when your reading will begin. So this is deck number 1 or pile 1, pile 2, or pile 3. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you think about your reading. Have a good one. I'll see you in your reading. Hello, pile number 1. Thank you for joining me. Let's see what we have going on with these. I haven't shuffled. I should have probably have done that before I did this, but I hope you guys are doing okay. I didn't realize it had been so long since I had done one of these, so this will be my official first pick a pile reading video for the year. So let's see what we have here. So what does pile number 1 need to hear today? We have the 5 of fire or 5 of wands. We have the ace of fire or the ace of wands. We have the sun reversed, and then we have the 9 of water reversed or 9 of cups. And try and put it like in frame. And then we have finally the 7 of fire upright. So looking at these cards, it may look like there may be some kind of challenges coming up. Maybe there's some different personality conflicts going on at the present moment. Just from the cards that I've gotten, there's a lot of fire. There is the sun reverse, and then having the 9 of water reverse here. So there may be something that maybe didn't really turn out the way that you had anticipated, or hasn't really been coming together how you thought it was going to. With the 5 of fire, this is usually a card of conflict and challenges. It can just talk about maybe feeling that there's some challenging times up ahead, that you kind of feel like you're being pitted against other situations or other people in your life. Wands are passion and drive and our sense of aggression in a lot of ways too, because it's that fire energy. And so 5s can really be the number of obstacles and changes. So there may be some things that maybe have had to change within your creative processes, within things that maybe you were once passionate about. So it can feel very much like you are, again, being kind of not isolated in this situation, but maybe feeling like everyone's kind of ganging up on you in some ways. And so right now it can just feel a little bit more challenging than necessary. So you may feel like a little bit more inclined to be vocal about what you believe in and what you're passionate about. So there is this kind of energy that feels a little bit like you're being asked to kind of show up in a very realistic way. I don't want to say aggressive, but maybe very realistic way as to like what is actually going on with you. What is it that you're actually willing to fight for, if that makes sense? I think with the 5 of wands kind of kicking off everything here, or the 5 of fire, is that we're kind of given this energy that's kind of saying like, are we going to rise up to the challenge to change? Are we going to kind of go with the things that need to shift? Because conflict doesn't always have to be something that is negative. Conflict can initiate a lot of changes. It can really allow us to grow. And so maybe right now there's just a little bit of this sense of not really feeling so much the growing pains, but maybe kind of that anxiety that tends to come from not really knowing how things are going to turn out. Now, next to that, we have the Ace of Wands or the Ace of Fire. I think that this is really kind of saying that we are given an opportunity for some new vitality, for something to kind of come into our lives that maybe is a little fresh, a little different, maybe something that needs to shift and change. Again, the Ace of Wands is almost like that spark, that initiation, so to speak. So maybe there's something here that some of the conflict and challenges that have been going on, or some of the difficulties that we've been feeling, The Ace of Wands is kind of here to say, all right, something is shifting, something is changing. Now we have an opportunity to kind of open the door to something new, something that feels a little bit more aligned with what we are, what we want, what we feel more connected to. I think the Ace of Fire is also an invitation to kind of say what opportunities are available to you right now that maybe you haven't really been seeing. What is it that maybe creatively you haven't had a chance to kind of focus on? What is it that maybe is a little bit of like that driving force for you in some ways that maybe now is a great time to focus on those areas and on those things. So I think the Ace of Wands is here to kind of say, like, while potentially things may not have turned out the way that you had anticipated, there is an opportunity here to do something different. And maybe the opportunity here is to kind of look at where you have been blocked from being able to shine, from being able to show up as your authentic self. There's a lot of this warm energy here. There's a lot of fire. There's a lot of like this, like, you know, kind of looking at heat, looking at warmth, looking at joy, looking at what drives us. And I feel like the Sun reversed is kind of saying, like, there's something here that has been, you know, within yourself. Maybe you haven't really had a lot of time to do things that bring you joy, that make you feel happy, that allow you to really shine in the ways that you should. And so maybe there's something here that feels a little bit inauthentic or disingenuous. And so maybe you've been kind of struggling with, what does that mean for you? And so I think the Sun reverse is kind of saying, like, maybe this may not feel like the best time for you to kind of show up as yourself and to show up in the ways that you had intended to show up in this area of your life. Now, with this being a major card, major cards can kind of say this is like something that is going to affect a lot of different aspects of your life. It's not just going to be just the one thing. It can be in several different areas of your life that you're kind of realizing, like, oh man, I'm not really feeling a sense of happiness and joy in the different things that I've been kind of going through. And so I think with the Sun here reversed, we're kind of given an opportunity to kind of say, okay, let's kind of be a little bit more introspective about, you know, what we believe in, what feels right for us. And maybe we need to look at, you know, why aren't we happy? Why aren't we feeling a sense of joy and warmth in our lives? What is it that maybe we can kind of add in at this point in time that can kind of expand on those things? And how can we, you know, grow out of the things that have felt like they've been blocking us in different ways? So I think, if anything, the Sun here is an invitation for us to explore a little bit deeper within ourselves, to kind of look at, you know, what do we really want? What really, you know, works for us? What makes us feel happy? And why aren't we, you know, kind of living that truth out loud? Why aren't we showing up in that energy a little bit more? So I think the biggest lesson from this card being the third one here on this row is that maybe we need to not let other people's like conflict with us be something that doesn't allow us to show up authentically for ourselves. Sorry, my dog's up. And I think that this is also an invitation to kind of say, how can we truly shine? How can we, you know, really get back to understanding what makes us happy and what that means for us long term? So there may be a lot of like lessons and kind of learning about that, and trying to be a little bit more focused on, you know, the things that make us really actually happy. So think of the Sun as like this opportunity to really like rise up and shine, and again, bringing things that like make us feel like alive in so many different ways. And right now it's almost saying, like, you're not allowing yourself to kind of move into this energy. Now underneath that we have the Nine of Cups, or Nine of Water reversed. This is usually a card of like our wishes being fulfilled, our dreams coming true. It is very much a like, you know, you're there at the final like precipice of everything really coming together in a way that you had intended. Water or cups can be very much an energy of our intuition, our feelings, our relationships, our connections, as well as, being a little bit more fluid. I think that there's a lot of creativity that comes from the nines, from the water suit, sorry. And nines can be very much this energy of, like you're almost at the end of everything, but there's just like one more thing that you need to let go of or something that you need to learn. Sorry, I'm gonna have to deal with my dog. She is all up on me right now. Sorry about that. All right, so the nine of water reverse can maybe say that there's maybe some things that didn't really turn out the way that you had anticipated. Or there may be some things that you were like, oh, I thought it was going to be this way, but now it's like this. Or um, there's just something that hasn't really come together in a way that maybe you had been wishing for or had been expecting. And so there is a little bit of this like blocked energy where it's almost saying like, what do you need to maybe perhaps move away from? Because if we look at the lesson from the Eight of Cups, it's a card of like emotionally, moving on. Maybe there's something that we haven't really let go of so that our things and our dreams can truly come together so that our wishes can be fulfilled. There may be something that, we've been hanging on to, that is in essence maybe blocking what is trying to kind of come into fruition for us. Or maybe this is an opportunity for us to look at, I've been working really hard towards this goal, and maybe I'm just now realizing it's not even something I want any longer. And that is something that, a lot of us tend to experience. We may, work and make space for something and then have the realization that it's not really something that we feel aligned with any longer. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that the Nine of Water here, especially underneath like the Five of Fire and the Ace of Fire, I think it's almost asking us to kind of reflect on, if we were kind of put into a corner and ask, what are we fighting for? What are we doing? Is it still really what we desire? Is it still really what, we want for ourselves in different ways? So I think the Nine of Water here is almost saying like it's a time for us to maybe reflect on what our wishes are, what sort of things would really truly make us happy, because sometimes we think the answer is one thing and then we have the realization that actually it's not that at all, and it'll be completely different than we had anticipated. And finally, we have the Seven of Fire, or the Seven of Wands. I think that this is very much a card of like spiritual connection and really understanding that sometimes you have to learn how to rise above other people's initiation and invitations into things that are like out of alignment for you, if that makes sense. I know that seems very like a cerebral way of thinking about it, but I think the Seven of Fire is very much this energy of, okay, what have I been learning here? What has been revealed to me? What am I seeing at this opportunity right now? Maybe not everyone is going to like the things that are working out in my favor. Maybe not everyone is going to understand why things are coming together for me, but haven't been for them. So there may be this, I almost want to say a little bit of like a conflict of sorts, but not to the extent of like kind of feeling like you're being kind of put to the test. I think that the traditional imagery for the Seven of Wands is like someone like at the edge of a cliff. So you can either look at it as like you're being pushed off of the cliff, or you can look at it as like the fall, where you can kind of say like, okay, this is me taking a leap of faith. This is me kind of changing up the routine, taking on my own journey. So I think the Seven of Wands is here as almost an invitation to kind of say like, okay, if this is like all that you have and all that you've done, what does this mean for you long term? Are you willing to kind of go to bat for this? Are you willing to kind of say, hey, these are the things that, I really appreciate and that I've been working hard towards, especially having the sun reversed above it. I think it's almost saying like, okay, if someone were to ask you, is this a life that you've imagined for yourself? Is this a life that really, truly makes you happy? Are you willing to kind of say, all right, I will go to bat for it. I will defend it. I will say, this is what I'm going to keep doing. This is what really feels in alignment for me. So this week, or at this time, it may feel like maybe some of your dreams are kind of being put to the test in some ways. Maybe other people have been questioning the things that you have kind of put yourself and invested a lot of yourself into. There may be this sense of having to kind of, not to say defend yourself, but maybe feel like you have to kind of explain why you're on a certain path and why you're doing certain things. I think that's the thing with this kind of energy right now, where it just feels very like, I don't want to say invasive, but maybe something along those lines, where it just feels very much like everyone's a little bit on edge. It just feels a little bit weird. And I think with this, full moon in Cancer that we just had, a lot of emotions have been coming up. There is a lot of this sense of having to kind of deal with certain wounds, or maybe wanting to kind of hash things out. And I think this is kind of the energy of this reading, where it's almost saying like, okay, what actually truly makes you happy? Why have you been kind of like holding back? What is it that maybe right now feels very challenging? And I think at the end of the day with these cards, they're kind of saying like, we need to not just rely on ourselves solely. Maybe we need to kind of like expand who we're connecting with. Maybe a lot of us have just been very isolated and very focused on our own paths, and not being a little bit more, not to say receptive, but maybe we just haven't really been as open with everybody as we should, or in ways that can feel a little bit more supportive. So let me see what we have for an oracle card here. Let's see. What do we have? All right, so here we have Ego Illusions is the card that I got for us. And so here we have don't believe thoughts, inner stories, and befriending your ego. Kind of like what I was talking about, right? Where maybe we're just not really in alignment with certain things. And so a lot of this is being illuminated right now. And I think with the ego illusions, it can also be this like need or desire to present a certain like maybe like facade to make other people feel comfortable. Maybe it is kind of saying like, hey, that's like you've been wearing a mask long enough. Maybe it's time to kind of open yourself up and not be so afraid to kind of show up as your messy self. Because the thing with life is that none of it is neat. None of it is perfect. It is very messy. Being a person is very messy. Being a human, especially during these times, can feel very, very messy and very, very confusing. And so I think that this is almost saying like, hey, we need to stop believing these like stories that maybe, these voices that we're hearing in our heads that, are things from the past, or things that we've heard, or other people's judgments that really don't have anything to do with who we really truly are. And so I think with this befriending the ego, it's almost saying like we need to kind of get back to understanding who we are, what we want, what that means for us, so that we can really truly shine in the ways that we're supposed to, as well as having our dreams being fulfilled and having our wishes come true. Because I think a lot of us, it's like we feel like, oh, this always happens to everybody else, or everybody else has, these things work out for them, but this is always like something that is challenging for me, and I'm not really going to have that. And so I think that's why we're ending with the 7 of Fire, where it's someone saying like, okay, this is go time. Like, you may not always be celebrated for the things that you may be doing, but as long as they're in alignment with what you want and who you are, then everything is really going to come together for you. So I think that's all I want to pull for this pile. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that you enjoyed this reading. I hope that 2025 treats you kindly, and that you are doing things that feel in alignment for you. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye. Hello, pile number 2. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to say, I forgot to shuffle, so we're just going to do this on screen, but I do want to say thank you so much for being here with me. I really hope that this reading finds you well, and that it brings you some clarity as well as some guidance as to what is going on. I can't believe it's been so long since I've done one of these, so I was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's been like months. All right. What do we need to know for pile number 2? First, we have the 6 of Wands, Next, we have the Two of Swords. I think I'm going to keep this one reversed. And then we are going to have the Moon. I feel like that one should be upright. And then we're going to have the Tower reversed. And then the King of Cups reversed. Okay, I think that's all I want to pull here for today. I may pull an oracle card in a little bit. Hopefully everything is in frame. I'm going to kind of shift my camera a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, so very first card, or actually just looking at everything here, again, it kind of feels like there's a lot of transitions or changes going on. There may be a lot of things that feel a little bit at odds with what you had intended to kind of happen for you. And there may be some connections or relationships that have kind of shifted at this point in time. And so you may be a little bit more focused on what does that mean for you and what does that mean for you moving forward. So the very first card we have the victorious Six of Wands, which is a card of victory and success, and everyone kind of seeing you as someone that is victorious and successful. So there may be this kind of sense of like receiving the accolades due. And there may also be this invitation to kind of say like, how can you celebrate what you've overcome? How can you celebrate what you've done? How can you find a little bit more joy in that sense of, you know, really being on the right path? When I think of wands, their passion, right? So their momentum and travel and our passion, our sense of drive. And so it can feel very much like you're wanting to be celebrated in some ways where other people can kind of see that you have overcome certain things, that maybe this is an opportunity for you to say, you know, I want to celebrate what I've done. I want to be kind of recognized for what I have overcome. I think with the Six of Wands, it is almost like this feeling that other people may be seeing the more shiny, kind of like pretty aspects of your life. And so you may feel at times like you have to kind of uphold an image that this is what it is. But it's also an opportunity from the universe to kind of say like, I am, you know, worthy of being celebrated. I am worthy of being able to kind of do certain things a certain way and to kind of move into this energy a little bit more, like with a little bit more intention, a little bit more of like this recognition of like, this is what I'm doing, this is what it is. And so I think the Six of Wands here is kind of saying that we're kicking it off, like kind of feeling very like celebratory. Maybe this year has been one where you're like kind of feeling like, I'm going to just like really put it out there, like the things that I've been accomplishing, the things that I've been doing. And I kind of feel this energy a little bit for myself too. So I'm kind of like, because I see this other energy kind of coming up around it. And I'm like, oh man, this kind of sucks. But it is, there's nothing to me. Okay, hold on. Let me rewind a little bit. There are no bad cards. There are cards that can feel a little bit more challenging, but life is sometimes that too, right? So I think with the Six of Wands here, it's almost saying like you may feel like you're on top of the world. You may feel like other people are recognizing your skills, your creativity, your drive, your passion, and they're wanting to kind of, you know, pat you on the back for it and say, hey, you deserve these things. Now, next to that, we have the Two of Swords reversed. Now, the Two of Swords, I feel like, is one of these cards that can feel very much like you're refusing to see something. You're a little disconnected from your intuition. You're not paying attention. With this being reversed, it's almost like maybe you kind of feel like you're starting to really, truly see things for what they are. You may feel like there is not as much balance in some of the choices that you've been making. Maybe you feel like there is a little bit of this sense of really wanting to see things for what they are. Now, if we kind of look at this as pointing to the lesson of the card before, we have this energy of the Ace of Swords, which is very much of like clarity of belief, really like kind of cutting past things. So I think the Two of Swords here, especially after feeling like, hey, I have a lot to celebrate for. I have a lot of things that maybe I deserve to have recognition for, or to have like a sense of I have been victorious over the things that tried to keep me down. the Two of Swords is kind of here as an invitation, especially reversed, to kind of say like, okay, now we got to get really clear on what we believe about ourselves. So maybe there's some sort of partnerships or things like that that haven't really come together the way that you had anticipated, or there may be this sense of being a little bit more clear as to what direction you really want to go into. Because when I think of the twos in tarot, I feel like they really recognize us choosing what we want next, and to kind of bring things into balance, bring things into harmony, to be a little bit more aligned with what it is that we're picking for ourselves. And I think swords can be very much cerebral, the logical, the mental kind of energy, communication, connection, in the sense of how we're connecting with others. And I think that the Two of Swords here is almost saying like, where there was a lack of clarity, maybe it's about kind of tuning back into yourself and kind of saying like, okay, but what do I really believe about what I'm capable of having here, or what I'm capable of choosing for myself? So I think the Two of Swords reversed here is kind of saying like, hey, I may not always win every single time, but I know that I'm capable of doing so. And so maybe there's something here that I'm not seeing quite so clearly because I have a fear as to what that'll look like for me, because I don't know what that may look like for me in the future. So I think the Two of Swords is here as, again, as a little bit of an invitation to kind of step back into understanding how this energy will play out for you and what this means for you long term. Now, I think it's interesting to then kind of have the moon, because in the first reading I had the sun in this position, the sun reversed. And so the moon is one of these cards that to me really represents our emotional state, while also kind of bringing a little bit of like this unexpected, wild kind of energy with it, as well as really saying like there's something here that maybe we need to confront. Maybe there's some baggage we've been carrying that doesn't really make sense for ourselves. So it can feel very much like, you know, a lot of things are kind of coming to the forefront that we have to process and deal with. So I don't know if maybe, you know, this full moon in Cancer, the first full moon of the year, has kind of like knocked you a little bit on your ass as far as like what you're doing, what you're choosing, what direction you're headed in. I think the moon is here to kind of say like, you may not be seeing things quite so clearly, because when we think of the moon, it's usually at night, right? So it's a luminary. You can't really see everything fully. You can see things, but there's still going to be stuff that is still hidden from you. And I think that's kind of the energy of the moon, where there is some clarity here, but it's still not full clarity like we would see with the sun. And so there is a little bit of this sense of not really seeing things quite the way as they are, or as the way that they're intended to be. There is a little bit of a sense of there's things within ourselves that we're starting to recognize that need to be confronted, or things that we need to process within ourselves that maybe are kind of blocking us. And as we can see with this card, there's like all these little, like, you know, little monster looking things kind of coming out of nowhere by the angel. And I think there's a little bit of this kind of unexpected energy that tends to come with the moon, because it's very much about, you know, the emotional movement. It's not so much about what is steady and what is consistent, even though we recognize that the moon has her phases and, you know, but it's still a luminary that is consistent with change. And so I think that the moon here, being the major card, kind of anchoring these first three cards, is that we're kind of given this opportunity to look at, you know, what needs to shift, what haven't we really been seeing clearly, what do we need to kind of confront within ourselves that has been holding us back in some way, especially given that we have the Two of Swords reversed before it. It's almost saying like, we got to get clear on what we believe, and we got to kind of see what this means for us moving forward, because there's something that just hasn't really been coming together the way that we had anticipated, because the moon is very much related to our emotions, our feelings. And I think it's also this like energy of kind of saying like, what is it within ourselves that we are viewing as blocked or not really intentional in the ways that we would need? So I think that there's a little bit of this like back and forth that we may be having within ourselves, especially with that Two of Swords reversed, where we're kind of like, I want to have this, but then there's also this other part of me that doesn't really align with what is happening. Now, if we move on to the cards underneath, kind of supporting this energy, we have the Tower, but we have it reversed. So the Tower, I know for a lot of people, can be one of these cards that's kind of a little bit scary. I think that it's this card that's kind of saying like there's something here that maybe hasn't really shifted the way that you had anticipated. And so with the Tower reverse, I feel like it's almost saying like maybe we're still bound to certain things. If we kind of look at the lessons of the previous card, which would be the Devil, I think. Yeah, it's the Devil. I was like, wait, hold on. So it's like 16, 15, yeah. And so the Devil is really kind of talking and showing us like where we have kind of like, you know, chained ourselves to certain things, where we have to kind of learn how to master certain things about ourselves. And I think the Tower reverse is kind of saying like maybe we have been holding back something that is wanting to shift, wanting to change. Maybe we feel like, hey, this isn't really for me. Hasn't really been working. This isn't really the things that I had wanted, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a connection with, you know, the people that, you know, we surround ourselves with. I think that the Tower reversed, especially underneath like the Six of Wands and the Two of Swords, as much as we may feel like I'm on the right path, I'm doing the right things, the Tower reverse is kind of saying there's still something that feels like disjointed or just doesn't feel in alignment. Because when I think of the Tower, as much as it may come in and shake things up and kind of break us down, it allows us to have a breakthrough. It allows us to have a new level of understanding within our lives. And it kind of like shakes out all of the things that maybe we are too stubborn to let go so that we can have something else. As someone who, you know, does not like disruptions and does not like having to deal with like sudden pivots and changes, so to speak, I think the Tower can be one of these cards that I kind of look at and I'm like, oh, like, please don't. Because I'm like, you know, I'm an earth sign. I'm fixed. You know, I'm like, I just want something that feels steady and consistent and feels right for me. But I think the other thing with this is that the Tower reverse can also be, not to say a warning, but maybe, again, an invitation to look at, you know, where have you been hanging on to stuff that is not allowing you to really rebuild? What sort of limitations have you been placing upon yourself that haven't really allowed you to move into the right sort of energy or the right sort of, maybe we'll say, situations and circumstances that can really allow for the changes and growth that you would like, or to find a renewed sense of inspiration. So if this is about a relationship, I would say that maybe there's been a lack of like really coming together, trying to kind of co-create the change that's necessary to rebuild something a little bit more solid. And especially given like that Two of Swords and that Six of Wands are kind of like pointing towards this Tower reverse, is I feel like, again, maybe there is like this sense of, I know what I want, but I don't really know which way to kind of head into it. And I know that if I give this up, does that mean that I'm going to look like I'm an abject failure if it's not done in a way that other people can understand? Now we have the King of Cups to kind of round everything out here, but it is reversed. And I feel like the King of Cups is very much this energy of like, when I look at it upright, it's someone that's been very mature, someone that is like emotionally stable, someone that has, you know, is not going to just be very invested in how they can manipulate a situation, if that makes sense. And I think the King of Cups reversed here is that it is kind of showing that there may be some sort of emotional manipulation, a lack of emotional maturity, a lack of emotional intelligence, perhaps from some of the male or masculine people around you. And so there may be this sense of not really knowing what that means for you, or there may be a lack of having some sort of like guidance from perhaps like a father figure or something along those lines, where it can feel very much like you're having to navigate a lot of things on your own. So it can feel very challenging for you. I think that with this one, especially having like the moon kind of like pointing towards it as well, maybe there's a lot of reflection going on as far as like how you were raised, some of the things and the lessons that you've learned about relationships and connections and what that means for you overall, as well as being a little bit more aware that some things aren't really meant to last forever and some things are just going to have to shift and we're going to have to release certain things. So I think with the King of Cups reversed here, we're being a little bit, there's a little bit of an invitation to maybe reflect on ourselves and to not feel like we have to give away our personal power to make other people feel comfortable. Now, I did pull an oracle card from the Elemental Empath deck. And here we have Inner Authority, which is about trusting yourself, listening to your true self, trauma versus guidance, which I think is kind of what these cards are kind of talking about, you know. It's really about, you know, reflecting upon yourself, not feeling like you have to kind of choose the lesser of two evils, understanding that it's okay to be celebrated and that sometimes change is inevitable and necessary, and to not get distracted by what other people expect of you. So I think that this is very much an invitation to kind of understand how can you lean back into trusting what you want, what you need, listening to that energy within yourself, and then looking at, you know, where have you allowed trauma to be something that's leading you into situations or circumstances that aren't for your highest good, as well as how can you lean a little bit more into trusting your own personal guidance. Because I feel like the moon is very much that kind of energy of like listening to yourself and having to confront certain aspects of yourself, as well as the Two of Swords is usually a card that's kind of saying like, hey, you're not listening to your intuition, you're not connecting a little bit there. The Tower is, again, an energy that is saying this is the breakdown that can allow a breakthrough. And the King of Cups is usually a card of like nurturing that emotional aspect of yourself and being very mature about it. But there's something here that's kind of saying like, you're not allowing some of these shifts and these changes, or maybe there has been a situation that's making you want to kind of lean back into old energies of just like, I just need to win. It doesn't mean I have to be right or that it has to feel right for me. So I think a lot of these energies right now can feel very much like, how can I have inner authority versus, you know, proving that I am the most right? I think is kind of the gist of this reading. For you today, it can feel like there may be some conflict kind of brewing. But again, I think if we just kind of lean into the message of the oracle card of just that inner authority, trusting ourselves, listening to our intuition, not stooping down into situations and circumstances that, you know, take us and remove us from our intentions, I think we'll be, you know, exactly where we need to be. So I hope that this reading made sense. I want to say thank you so much for joining me. Please take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hello, friends. This is pile number 3. Thank you so much for joining me. I have not shuffled these cards. And I actually have not used these for a reading yet, so we'll see how these go today. I hope you've been well. I hope this year is moving smoothly for you. I feel like it's already just rushing by, but also it feels very long. I don't know if you guys are kind of feeling that kind of energy too, where I'm just like, how is it already the 16th? But then also like, what is going on? I feel like we're on the 53rd of January or something. So, all right, let's see. What do we have for pile number 3? What does pile number 3 have to hear today? So we have the Hierophant. We have the King of Cups again. That happened during pile 2. Then we have the 3 of Wands. And then we have the 4 of Pentacles. This is very interesting art for these cards. Very different than I'm used to. All right, and then we have the 9 of Cups, which is funny because that was in our first pile. So we'll just put these guys over here. Okay, so looking at these cards, it just seems like maybe right now feels a little bit more of a intentional time is to figure out like what it is that you want to do and how you want to kind of move into this energy for this year. Now, the very first card we have is the Hierophant, which is a card of like teaching and learning. And it can be very much a card of like the structures around us that are maybe like more governing, if that makes sense. So this could be a card that can really rule over like governments, religious institutions. There's a lot of tradition that tends to come up with the energy of the Hierophant. And so I feel like right now, a lot of us are maybe questioning some of the traditional institutions around us in different ways. But if we look at it as a more personal message, especially with this being the only major card we have here, is that maybe this year is one where you're like, okay, I'm going to, invest in what I'm learning. I'm going to invest in like how I'm showing up and what I'm teaching others about what I have going on. I think that this is very much this energy of like exchange in a lot of ways, exchange of knowledge, exchange of experience, and showing up in ways that feel a little bit more authentic to what you value and what it is that you want. The other thing with the Hierophant is that it is this like rulership over Taurus, right? And so we're kind of like maybe focused a little bit more on like what we believe in, and also being a little bit more focused on what that means for ourselves and in our world. There is a lot of this kind of energy that comes with the Hierophant that I feel, again, feels a little bit more rigid, a little bit more structured. It can feel a little bit less like flexible in some ways. But I think that the best way for us to learn is to remain open-minded. And so I think the Hierophant is here to kind of show us that energy too, while also not being so stubborn that we don't open ourselves up to the opportunity that maybe some things are just going to be a little bit different than we had anticipated. Now, I think with the Hierophant here kind of kicking everything off is that maybe you are someone that has been wanting to be a little bit more intentional as to what you're focusing on and what your energy is where your energy goes, what you are investing your energy into. And so I think that maybe right now you're like in planning mode as far as like, I need to be a little bit more, like structured with myself. I need to be a little bit more, not to say demanding, but maybe more like, okay, this is I need to have like a better schedule. I need to do this. I need to do that. Like, and, kind of being like a planner girly, if that makes sense, which, as a Taurus, I totally get this energy. But I think that this is also maybe like kind of taking, a look at, again, who's ruling over you? Like what is going on? What is this energy really bringing to you in different ways? And so there may be some things that maybe you're questioning as far as like what you believe in and what that looks like for you moving forward. Now, next to that, we have the King of Cups, which this is a card that can really be about like emotional maturity, connections. This can talk about like those fatherly kind of figures, or maybe someone that you look up to that's a masculine energy that maybe feels very comforting, that is, again, very emotionally intelligent while also being emotionally mature. And I think with the King of Cups here, we're kind of given this energy of like, who can we lean into to also nurture us? Someone that can support us, someone that can maybe give us a little bit of like this guidance of looking a little bit more into, what we desire and what that means for us long term, and how we can kind of co-create a life that is aligned with that sort of energy. So I think the King of Cups, especially after the Hierophant, we're kind of given a little bit of this energy of like, okay, we've made a plan. Now we got to do the emotional work to actually make it, be something that is solid and that we can be successful at. Because when I think of a king, I think of this sort of energy of being victorious and, having won that crown, if that makes sense. And so I think that the king here is almost saying like, okay, you have to, overcome the things that maybe, come up for you that may block you, or this is an opportunity for you to be a little bit more aware of like how your energy is affected by the things that are going on around you, while also having that, again, that emotional maturity to kind of say like, this is what I want, this is what I'm doing, this is what it'll look like, and being a little bit more established. Because I think of the King of Cups as being, again, all of the kings as being very established, very much in alignment with themselves, and very much aware of like what this energy means to them long term. So it can be a reflection of like looking at your dreams, looking at your intuition. What are your feelings of what's going on right now? And what does that mean for you overall, especially it kind of being in the center of this top row. Now, next to that, we have the Three of Wands, which is a card of like strategy and planning and kind of like going out into the world, while also having the understanding that you have done some of the work that's necessary before you can kind of take off and do things. So I feel like the Three of Wands is very much an invitation of expanding your horizons, of, you know, very much kind of like being receptive to what that looks like for you moving forward, and how you can kind of not so much like celebrate, but maybe come together in community, because I feel like the number 3 in tarot is very much about community and connection and kind of like being out there. And then wands can be travel and momentum and movement and fire and passion. And so I think that this is very much an invitation to kind of say, like, when's the last time you kind of went out into the world and felt very driven and passionate about what's been going on? When is the last time you felt like a sense of camaraderie with the people that you surround yourself with? So there is very much this kind of energy of trying to kind of go out into the community and connecting with others, especially, you know, having that King of Cups behind, kind of urging this energy of like saying like, okay, we've established ourselves, we know what we want. Now it's time to kind of like go out into the world and kind of see like who else is doing this, or how can I connect with others that maybe want to know how to do this, or other people that maybe feel like they need some assistance in this, especially with the Hierophant as the first card, kind of saying like we have to learn, but we also have to teach. We have to kind of share our knowledge. We don't have to kind of hang on to everything by ourselves. What are we sharing with others? What are we teaching others? How are we showing up in a sense of community with those that are around us? And maybe this is an opportunity to kind of say like, okay, I need to stop. Not to say like you're hoarding knowledge to yourself or anything like that, but maybe there is a sense of, I don't know if I'm good enough to show up in this energy all of the time. So there may be an invitation to kind of say like, hey, I'm ready to share my experiences. I want to, you know, kind of co-create a community with others in a way that feels fun and that makes me feel driven, that makes me feel like lit up again. So I think the energy with this card is kind of saying like, all right, we have to kind of step out of our comfort zone and not just remain as we are, where we are, because it's not always going to be the only place that our energy can best be used, if that makes sense. So underneath everything here, we have the Four of Pentacles, which is a card of like building our foundation. It is like trying to establish ourselves, having that firm foundation. I think with fours in tarot, especially for the minor suits, there is a little bit of this sense of like discontent, a little bit of a sense of and I think with Pentacles, it's a slower energy, so it can feel a little bit like boring. It can feel a little bit like things are not really moving or shifting, or we kind of feel like we're having to be very aware of the material, our earthly, the physical. And so it can kind of say like, hey, what is your foundation? What does a physical, you know, existence look like for you? Where is your money? Like, what is your budget? Like, what is going on here? And so a lot of these questions may be coming up right now for you, as far as like, okay, you have all these big ideas and these big plans, but let's be realistic. Like, what's going on with our budget? What's going on with our foundation? How can we be a little bit more firm with it? And I think that there's a little bit of like a sense of discontent that can tend to come with the fours. Not to like a huge extent. I think that maybe the Four of Pentacles can just feel a little bit more like, oh, I'm so focused on just like establishing myself. And sometimes all of that hard work can just feel a little bit boring. It can feel a little bit like, I want to get to the next phase. I want to complete this. And so we don't have a lot of that like drive to kind of finish things quite yet right now, because maybe there's a sense of fear that we may lose it, or there's a sense of fear that, you know, we're having to do a lot of these things by ourselves. So I think the Four of Pentacles is here as an invitation to kind of say like, okay, let's establish ourselves. Let's figure out, you know, what drives us, like what makes us feel solid, what makes us feel like on, you know, the right path, what makes us feel a little bit more connected. to what we are trying to do, if that makes sense. And I think the Four of Pentacles here is kind of saying like we're still establishing ourselves. And so it's not going to feel super solid all of the time, but it's also not going to just be removed from us just because we haven't really built it up to the level that we would like for it to be. And I think with that the Three of Wands before, it's almost saying like, hey, you have to still have fun. You can't just like, we're not just meant to just like work and work and work and work and do and do and do and do. Like we still have to take some time out to rest. We still have to take some time out to connect with ourselves and do things that feel like more connected for us, and to kind of establish our roots, to kind of connect a little bit more in some ways. Now, finally, we have the Nine of Cups, which is a card of our wishes coming true, everything coming together, everything working out, our dreams being fulfilled. Now, this is upright. So it is kind of saying like, hey, if you have done the work and you've done everything that's necessary and you've walked away from things that were holding you back, and you've kind of moved from this place of, oh, it's going to be so hard or it's going to be so challenging and I just have to kind of be stuck in this energy and not have a lot of support or not really explore the world and kind of like explore the things within me that feel supported, then it's going to feel a little bit more challenging to get to this energy of the Nine of Cups. But this is also an invitation to kind of look at the things that you have been wishing for. And I think with the Four of Pentacles before it, we're kind of given an invitation to look at, well, what do we really want? What does that look like for us? I feel like sometimes we have a lot of moving targets in our life, as far as like, we're like, oh, if I have this, I'll be happy. Or if I get to this goal, then things will be better. But then we might reach that goal and then we're like, okay, never mind. Now it's this or now it's that. And so when there's always a moving target, it can feel a little bit challenging to move into a state of, okay, this is what I wanted. And so we may feel like we're always kind of chasing something versus like giving ourselves an opportunity to say like, hey, I've overcome this. I have succeeded. I have done what was necessary. So I think with the Nine of Cups, is someone saying like, how can we move into this energy of gratitude and being grateful and kind of recognizing the things that we have overcome, the things that we have had, come true in our lives, or, what wishes have been fulfilled. And sometimes, again, our wishes change. Something that maybe we're like, oh, I really wish I have an opportunity to have this thing. And then we get the thing and then we realize, wow, this is like not what I thought it was going to be, or this is, really making me unhappy or making me feel very disconnected in a lot of ways. And then we start wishing for something else, right? So I think with the Nine of Cups kind of rounding out things here, we're being shown like, hey, we need to kind of look at our foundation as far as like what it is that we're wishing for, what it is that we want and need, and what that means for our happiness, and how can we, feel established and feel like we have learned and we have, overcome certain things that maybe have held us back in some ways, while also being willing to kind of go out into the world and change how we view things and what we're establishing for ourselves. So I think the Nine of Cups is here as an invitation to say, hey, like everything's coming together. You will get everything that you want and deserve, but you don't have to feel so like afraid to kind of like trust that everything is going to fall into place. Because right now it may not feel like things are going that way. They may feel like you're having to kind of either walk away or make a strategy that feels a little bit out of your comfort zone, or having to go back out into the world in new ways. And so right now, it's almost saying like, as long as you're solid with yourself and you know who you are and what you want, and you have the emotional intelligence and maturity to kind of say like, this is it, or this is what I need, everything's really going to come together. So don't question yourself so much, or don't feel like it's not for you. All right, so let's see what we have for an oracle card today. So here we have boundaries. So again, reclaiming your space. It's all about your energetic, your inner, outer, and energetic boundaries. I think with these cards, especially kind of like looking at some of the emotional aspects that are kind of coming up here, it is almost an invitation to kind of say like, hey, having a firm foundation is also a part of that boundary work. Now, boundaries may be something you've heard of or have kind of seen thrown around online and kind of like, oh, if I say no, that's a boundary and blah, blah, blah. Boundaries can be something so simple as like saying, hey, I don't have time for that, or hey, this is, for me, or this is for that, or I prioritize this over that. That's also a boundary. And I think the biggest thing with the boundaries card here is that it is kind of telling you like, hey, you need to kind of start, not to say just no to say no. It's more, again, it's reclaiming space for yourself. It's saying, hey, I need this over this, and that is my priority. So I need to, I can only be in one place at one time, so I can't be all things to all people. And boundaries are going to be a beautiful lesson in that, as far as like really learning how to say, this is what I'm prioritizing right now, or this is what I find most important in my life. And as someone who is a little bit of a workaholic, I'm listening to this message and I'm like, okay, I see. Because I do struggle a little bit with saying no. I do struggle a little bit with like not twisting and bending myself up to make other people happy or to make other people feel comfortable. Thankfully, I do have people in my life that kind of remind me like I don't have to do that. And so I think with the boundaries card, it is very much an invitation to kind of explore, how can you check back in with yourself and kind of look at your priorities, look at, what are you building, and is it what you really wish for? Is it really what you've been trying to work towards? And if not, how can we kind of get back to that planning stage and be a little bit more strategic as to like how this looks like for us moving forward? So I think the boundaries card is just, again, a reminder to reclaim your space, and looking at all of the energetic boundaries, inner and outer boundaries that you have with others. Are people really honoring that and allowing you to, be in your power without being overbearing, if that makes sense? So I want to say thank you so much for joining me, pile number 3. I really hope that this reading brought you some clarity. I want to say thank you so much for being here with me and watching my video. Please take care, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.